Good afternoon.
Go forward to go back.
So my idea was a vegetable and fruit social before the meeting, but I was intelligently overruled by people that appreciated that part of health is happiness and joy, and ice cream gives all of us happiness and joy. So anyway, welcome here. I want to thank you guys for coming. This is part of our campus conversation, and Chris DeBoard, who is the Vice President for Talent and Culture, and is that it?
That's it.
That's good. I never remember people's title, is here to lead off our conversation. And we're going to present a few slides to you about some of the results of our culture survey for the university, and then I'm going to present just a very few slides about the health sciences. But the goal of today is to make sure that we hear from you guys and that you help us understand what are the things that we can do together at the university and certainly here at the health sciences to make this the greatest place it can be, even if ice cream is substituted for the appropriate fruit and vegetable choice. All right, sounds good. Chris.
Excellent. I'm going to stand over here so I'm not standing in front of Clay when I present. But let's just talk a little bit about today, the agenda for today. We're going to go through the 2018 culture survey results. I'll talk about the overall university results, year-over-year changes. What we're really going to focus on are where did we make progress? Where were the big drivers across the university? And then I'm going to just tee it up a little bit. I want to talk about some personal observations on the HSC from 35,000 feet, and then I'll let Clay kind of talk through things from there. And then, like Clay talked about, we'll do an open Q&A answer session through this. And I know we've also got some folks we're streaming. You have the ability to submit questions online as well, and Brent will be capturing those on index cards and giving those to Clay and myself, and we'll make sure those get answered. Okay, so first question is why culture? Why is culture important? Why are we focused on this? And anybody that's ever worked in an organization with a strong culture knows that you can have a great strategy, but if you have a culture that is either really powerful to the good or really powerful in terms of negative behaviors, it can either accelerate what you're trying to do or it can absolutely slow things down and grind it to a halt. And so about 3 years ago, we started working with an outside firm, Sen Delaney, and I think some of you here might have been through some different workshops with Sen Delaney. They're really experts in this area. That's where Larry Sen primarily spent his entire life researching organizational cultures. And the real learning here is the culture is going to happen either way. In an organization, when you have a group of people together, what culture basically is how things get done and the sort of unwritten rules in an organization. So it's going to happen either way. You can either let it happen or you can try to consciously shape it. And the direction we've taken over the last 3 years at WVU as a leadership team is we're going to try to consciously shape it, but also understand that culture is a really powerful thing. A lot of those norms are deep-seated. A lot of those values and beliefs are deep-seated. So change doesn't happen overnight. This is a long-term kind of prospect for us, but we are making progress in a positive direction. We're pretty excited about that. So we're going to talk through it. But 2018 survey, once again, for the third year in a row, we had over 50% participation in the survey. Just to give you all a little bit of history on the process, we started 3 years ago with the idea that we really do think we can measure culture. That's one of the first things. If we're going to shape it, we have to try to understand what our culture is, what are the behaviors that move us forward, what are the behaviors that hold us back. So 3 years ago, to start that off, we did a survey with a sample of 2,000 faculty and staff and used that to kind of get everybody accustomed to the tool and accustomed to the process. And then the next year, we did a survey where we took all faculty and staff had the opportunity to participate, and we broke those results out by senior leader, so either dean or vice president in the university. This year, year 3, was the first year where we had year-over-year results by leader. And so that became really personal for a lot of deans and a lot of VPs to say, hey, what's happening in my school or in my unit? Where have we moved the needle? Where have we not moved the needle? And that was purposeful on our part. What we want to help leaders understand is that a lot of the choices senior leaders make, the decisions we make, that impacts culture a lot more than anything we can do centrally. That, Gordon could be the best university president in the world. We could do everything we could around having the best benefits program or the best comp program. But if you had a leader locally that didn't mirror those values and made different choices, that leader would be more powerful and more impactful on the culture than anything we could do centrally. And so we're trying to get that instilled as well, is that these results really are driven primarily by leadership, and the shadow of the leader is a concept we talk about, that every leader casts a shadow over their organization. How they show up, how they treat people, how they allocate resources, those really send messages around what the culture really is and what the unwritten rules are around the culture. And so we're trying to make sure we're all cognizant of that as we try to move the needle and make this a better place, like Clay talked about. And so when you take a look at this, this is nice. This is actually one of the biggest rooms I've been in, where when I put it up on the screen, I don't have to apologize with the numbers. We can actually read them. So that's refreshing for once. But I'm just going to talk. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'll talk through the big movers. But before I get into that, let's talk about these colors. And so you see a lot of red on that chart, right? And the way this survey is designed, it's a very simple tool. When you take the survey, everything is on a Likert scale of a scale of 1 to 7, with the low end being I strongly disagree, the high end being I strongly agree, right? So anything you see in red is pretty much people saying, I don't see this. Like when you look at these culture behaviors, if it's coming up red, it's saying, I don't see that, I disagree. I don't think that behavior really describes what happens a lot in our workforce. If you see it in gold, that's pretty much people saying, I agree. And elements where we do have green, it's somebody saying, I strongly agree. It's a 7 on that Likert scale. So our goal is not to move this to green, but there's a lot of, people have this reaction when they see this much red up there. They're like, oh my gosh, this can't be good. And what I just want you to, kind of put that in the back of your mind. It's red's a good thing for us because it's pointing out opportunities, and what we're really trying to understand is what behaviors really accelerate things here at WVU and what behaviors are opportunities. And so where we made the biggest impact, high performance is recognized and rewarded. We moved that almost 7 points year over year. So it's still red. So people are still saying, well, if you were going to describe WVU as a performance-oriented organization, I think of different places I've worked. PepsiCo was probably the most performance-oriented organization. I wouldn't say we're a PepsiCo, right? I think this is pretty fair. But we moved the needle pretty significantly year over year. A lot of that had to do with what we did around the salary increase program and some of the thoughts we had around design to try to address some issues we had with compression and inversion. Now we know, like we talked about when we did that, those are long-term issues we're going to have to solve. We weren't going to do it all in one bite, but the fact that we used the survey, we took feedback into account, and we were purposeful in how we designed what we did with our pay programs, we got credit for that, I think, with our faculty and staff. People feel appreciated and valued. As you know, we're doing a lot, or trying to do a lot more around just building a habit of recognition and building behaviors based around that habit. And again, we've moved the needle. We're not where we're saying, hey, we're awesome at this, but we are really, we're making a difference there. High levels of feedback and coaching. This is one where when you step back and you talk about culture being a long-term change process, not a short-term change process. When I got here 3 years ago and we started doing a lot of the Freedom Agenda discussions around campus conversation, I had not isolated, I had multiple people come to me at different places, different times during those presentations and say, you know what, I'm really concerned about the performance aspect of everything that's built into these policies, because I've worked here for 30 years and I've never had a performance discussion. So it wouldn't be I haven't had a performance review, it was I haven't had a performance discussion. And we've moved the needle pretty significantly in a short period of time. We're not where we need to be to say, hey, we're great at this, but we are at a point now where we can say with confidence, over 99% of our employees have received a performance review. Why we can't say 100 is you have those situations where somebody goes on medical leave, somebody moves in the middle of the review process, but we're as close to 100 as you can practically get. And 3 years ago, we were at a place where people weren't even having discussions, let alone having a performance review. So we've made some progress there culturally. Decisions are made for the overall greater good of the university, and people are empowered. The other thing we've been pushing with leaders is to try to get leaders to understand you have to let go, you have to delegate, you have to trust. That's why, if you pay somebody to work for you in a, particularly like a leadership capacity, if you have a manager on your team, you have to let that manager manage their people. You can't try to manage the team from, 20,000 feet above that person. But that's been a learning curve for us. There's been a lot of folks here where, traditionally, if you had control, that was the safest place to be. And so for a lot of leaders, they've learned that I control everything. I have my hands in absolutely everything that's going on. What we were hearing in the survey feedback was, though, that that's really that's not a great place to work. You want to be empowered, you want to be trusted to go out and be able to do what your title says you're supposed to be able to do. So those are our big movers. In terms of our strengths, so when you look at this and you say, what are the things that really are accelerate this university, move us forward, or highest scoring behaviors? This is what the general results tell us in terms of faculty and staff feedback. High level of student service consciousness. We are student focused. We get that. Everybody gets that. That's kind of second nature for most people that work here, which is great. There's a sense of pride. I mean, you go around the state, you see the flying WV on everything. A lot of us are from this area originally. A lot of us have gone to school here. There's a lot of pride in being associated with WVU. That is something that accelerates us and moves us forward. And there are high expectations for performance. This is relatively new in terms of creeping into the top scoring elements. 3 years ago, that was not one of our top scoring elements, but now folks are saying, yeah, you know what, the expectations have moved up around performance and what we expect here at WVU. In terms of lowest scoring behaviors, openness to change, again, as you can imagine, right? It's the thing I like about this when I talk about the survey, it's a very simplistic tool. And a lot of folks, particularly people that design surveys and do research, get very agitated that it's such a simple tool, right? It could be better, it could be tighter, it could be more precise. But at the end of the day, there's nothing here that we didn't already know. But what the survey enabled us to do is, from a leadership standpoint, we're holding each other accountable around, we know these are opportunities. We can't duck away from these opportunities. We have to face into them, and as leaders, we have to make a positive change here. So, high levels of feedback and coaching, people feeling appreciated and valued. We didn't need the survey to tell us those were opportunities, but we now are focused on making positive changes in that regard. The other thing we've done around that is we've made some senior leadership changes. I'm not going to go through specifically who those folks are, but we made some conscious decisions, not based on what those people delivered, but based on how they deliver and how they showed up, how they treated peers, how they treated the people who work for them. Those decisions weren't in line with our values, and we wanted leaders that would align with our values. And so that's just give you an idea of the highs and the lows on the survey. This is how that stacks up over the last 3 years. So if you look at this, the way it sets up, first year that we did it, our 3 highest scoring behaviors: sense of pride, student focused, and people are fun to be around. People genuinely enjoy the folks they work with here at WVU. And then lowest scoring: empowerment, coaching and feedback, appreciation and recognition. And then what you see highlighted, those are what changed year over year. Because again, you talk about trying to move a culture, you're not going to have major shifts year over year. It's incremental change is sort of the game we're in to try to make this a great place to work. And so what changed in 2017, that's the year we did Freedom Agenda. And so when we did that, we changed a lot of our policies. We moved away from seniority being the primary governing factor and moved to performance being the primary governing factor on things like reduction in force, as an example. And we moved to a performance-based compensation system with, guarantee that everybody gets a review every year, and that's going to determine your raise. And so what happened was high expectations for performance became one of our high scoring behaviors in terms of a strength, but it also became a low-scoring behavior in terms of recognition. And what people told us there basically when we did focus groups to understand that better, they were like, yeah, you've really improved the expectations around performance, but the person sitting next to me that I do my job and their job, they're getting roughly the same raise that I get. So you're not differentiating the reward yet to match with the expectations you have around performance. And so that's what we took that feedback into account when we designed the last wage plans that we delivered. And then 2018, you can see that fell off as the lowest scoring behavior based on the changes we made around our compensation practices, but then what crept in there is openness to change, right? But other than that, pretty much that sense of pride has stayed the same, student centricity has stayed the same, but coaching and feedback has also sat there. We've got to continue to get better. We have to help our leaders get better at coaching and feedback. So that's sort of high-level view over the last 3 years. And I'm going to kind of skip through these a little because I think you know those. We've been through those. I want to talk just a little bit about HSC and hand it over to Clay, and then we'll kind of open up for questions. When we got these culture survey results, one of the things we did this year that was different than prior years, and it's an evolutionary process. We're learning together as we go through this. We learned from year 2 to year 3 that, you know, we probably ought to go out and talk to the deans and talk to the VPs and spend some time with them and their leadership team and share these results, talk through them before we expect them to go and share them with their faculty and staff. And so we came out and we did that this year. I was out here on 2 different meetings with 2 different people. I'm not going to name those names, but it was one of those where you have these observations and you go, wow, there's something here, there's something different, there's something going on that you can just feel. And both of these people, these were separated by about 2 weeks in time, said almost identically the same thing, and they weren't scripted, they weren't trying to work that in any way at all. But when we came out to talk about culture survey results, I'm like, well, tell me about what do you see here on the page? What do you think? And I'm going to put these up here in a minute so you can look at them. But what's going on here? And both of them individually said, you know, I've worked here for over 20 years. And this is the best time that it's ever been to work at the Health Science Center. And people get it. People are excited about all of the changes we're trying to make, but people also understand that we've got to treat each other better. And there's an expectation there that if you're going to be here and you're going to be part of this, you're also going to treat each other well. And that stuck with me because, again, it was 2 separate people, both here over 20 years, 2 distinct points in time. When I asked the same question, I got almost the exact same response. And I was like, wow. I mean, that's, to me, there's something there. There's something going on. And so one of the things I did see, you know, like I talk about this survey and I say, most of the time, we don't need the survey to tell us what we're good at and what things are holding us back, but there are some insights we do get from this survey that otherwise we would have missed. The one that really stood out to me here, there's an environment which is optimistic and forgiving. And you see the change column associated with that. It moved in a real positive fashion. Now, Clay's been talking for the last couple of years around this concept of psychological safety. And that if people don't feel safe, they're not going to be productive, they're not going to feel like they can come and be their best every day. And you know, I have to be honest, the first time he talked to me about psychological safety, I was like, wow, this is more touchy-feely than the HR guy, right? And then when I came out and I heard those 2 comments and I looked at these results, it started to land for me where I'm like, he's really onto something. There's something here that you all are doing differently than we're doing on other parts of campus that I personally want to understand better, and then we want to try to take this and figure out how we take it to other parts of campus. But that is something to me, like when you talk about headlines from HSC, this concept of psychological safety, and when you think about a place that needs to innovate, having an environment where people feel it's an optimistic environment and it's safe to take risks is really, really important to innovation. So, I mean, we're on the path to something really strong there. But with that, Clay, I'm going to hand it over to you and let you talk a little bit more about how you've driven these numbers compared to the university.
So I want to tell a story to begin with, and then I'll get to the results. I'll be very, very brief. But there was something that really influenced me, and there are seats in the front if anybody wants to come down. Nobody will be called upon for questions or for their thoughts. But please feel welcome to come down here if you want to get a seat. So Hurricane Katrina, FEMA was struggling to try to help the people that were left in New Orleans. And at one point, there were so many people that were stranded in their houses that FEMA had a very few number of life rafts. And the director of FEMA said, when you go rescue people from their houses, there's no pets, no possessions, just people, because we don't have enough space. And guess what happened to all the boats? They came back empty. And Russell Honore, who the mayor then, Nagin, said was the John Wayne looking dude that walked off of the helicopter, who came from the Army to help oversee the rescue efforts, said, one rule and one rule only, treat people like they're your family. And then the boats started coming back with pets and stuff and people. And that's the way that we should all treat each other. And there's a lot of research to say exactly what Chris did. It's a project from Google, Project Aristotle, looked at their best teams. They looked at every aspect for 4 or 5 years. Laura, how long was it? 5 years. At their best teams. And the most resonant finding was their best teams had a higher degree of psychological safety. People could be authentic. People could be themselves. If you felt like something was wrong, you'd say it. And nobody got sacrificed, martyred at the front gates of the place. We want this to be a great place. We want this to be like family. I was part of an organization, and we said we wanted to be like a family. And somebody said, what if the family hates each other? And I'd say that's a different matter. But we want to be at our best because as leaders here, we serve you. I'm going to say that again. As leaders here, we serve you. We should make this the best place for you to do your work. That is what we believe. So Chris pointed out that we have many things. I think the one thing that I was proud of is we have a lot of yellow on ours as opposed to all red. I would love to see it all green, but ultimately people are being truthful, I hope, when they give their results. We had about how many? 32% response if I saw the
Trying to
slide.
remember, Maria, it's
about 477 out of
wasn't it?
1,300 and some people or
Yeah.
something. And I know there's other parts of our organization that didn't get asked to give their opinion, and we need to include everybody that we can. And we always, by the way, want sincere feedback, sincere honesty. Now, you can weaponize honesty. You can say, hey, I know more than you, and let me prove it to you over and over again and beat you with honesty. That's not what we're trying to do. But sincere honesty, we will always be able to hear what people share with us sincerely so that we're the best place we can be. I'll do the next slide. Yeah. And so as we look at our highest scoring behaviors, and Chris did a nice job of going through this, I think that we see the same sorts of things that the rest of the university do. Let's go to the, and then as we look at our most opportune behaviors, I think the key for us is that we need to listen more and we need to be able to create forums for people to give us feedback. So I think that the biggest opportunity that we have is we need to reach out further in our organization and in the people who are doing the work, find out what we can do to support folks who do the job every day to be able to do their job better and easier and with more joy. That is what I believe we can do. And I would say for me and from our leadership team, we want to do anything we can to make this the best place to work possibly. And if we don't treat each other like we would somebody in our own family, then we've missed an opportunity to make this place the place that we would all want people to come and to work and to thrive. And that's true today, and that should be even more true in the future. So basically, I would say that I'm really proud of the fact that we have moved the needle some on psychological safety and creativity. But this is like Lao Tse, who is the guy that wrote the Tao, which is sort of the Bible for Taoism. He had a quote that I love, and it says, "The journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step." Well, I think we've taken more than one step, and I'm proud of that. But the only way we're going to make this the best journey possible is if we're on that journey together. So we're happy to take questions and to try to get input and insight from you guys and from other people online. So please. Allie, why am I not surprised you're asking the first question? We have mics coming to you because we're streaming.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Clay. Question is that on the culture survey, how do we stack up against other mid-sized academic institutions with respect to the scores here?
So there's really not a lot of folks that are out doing this kind of work in the university settings. And for this particular vendor, there's not a database that we have in terms of comparison. So most of these, like on a corporate side, engagement surveys like this have been around for easily the last 2 decades. Hospitals as well and healthcare, they've been around for forever. They've got a database of normative data where they can tell you, here's how you look, here's how your peers look. We've not found a lot of folks, you know, at least when I've poked around, that are doing this kind of culture work on university campuses. I know Ohio State did this for a while with Gordon when he was there, but aside from that, we've not found anybody else that's doing this kind of work.
I would also say, and Jim has a question back there, I would also say that we're on a journey, and really the most comparator group that we're worried about is ourselves. So I think that we're on a journey to be the best place we can be based on the place that we decide as a team, as a group, that we want to live. Just like you do with your own family, we want this to be great by our own standards and by the standards of the people that work here. And if we're great against some benchmarking group, we have some sort of ranking or something, but internally people go like, oh, I hate to be here, then we fail. And if we are a great place to be, then all the other stuff will follow, I believe.
A comment and then a question. I do feel psychologically safe. As you and Laura can say, I'm allowed to say whatever I think. You tell me I'm
I'm sorry, your microphone just went off, Jim.
No, and then after you tell me I'm psychologically screwed up, then I feel safe. I have a question. One difference between downtown and here, at least on faculty, is salary and the amount of undergraduate teaching that's done or professional teaching. If on the downtown campus we paid faculty the same level as we do at the Health Science Center, would their numbers turn yellow overnight? I guess this is for Chris.
Yeah, let me just see if I understand the question the right way. If we paid the faculty more downtown, would their numbers be better, right? So this, again, is one of those where I'm not going to try to sound Pollyanna, but there are a lot of people that believe that money's a hygiene factor. It's not the reason why people work. I've come to find that in the recruiting that we've done quite a bit. We've shifted our messaging around recruiting to the purpose and the power of purpose here at WVU. And sort of what we found is talented people can work anywhere that they want. They want to be tied to something bigger. They want to be tied to this sense of purpose. They want to know they're having an impact somewhere. And if you treat people well and they feel like they're making a positive difference, money isn't the main determinant. If you don't have those other factors, you could pay somebody really well, but you know, like I'll give you an example. I made more money in corporate than I made here. I like doing this a whole lot more than I like working in corporate America, and that's why I'm at WVU, because I feel like I'm making a positive difference versus just selling things, right? So I don't know the comp is the only factor. I think, though, we have some practices we need to own. We get too far down the road on compression and inversion, and you know, we're honest about that, and we took a step forward to fix it. As we find money, we need to keep doing that. We need to keep trying to, you know, be honest where we're out of whack and try to fix it as best we can and be transparent. I think that's how we move forward from a pay standpoint.
And if I can just add a couple things. One is the finding that the average lottery winner is less happy than the average person. Now, some people say, try me, I'll give that a go. And that the average person who survives a life-threatening illness is happier than the average person. Because I think you understand, like Dorothy in Kansas, that all the priceless stuff is the stuff that we take for granted all the time. And the other one is Dan Pink's book, Drive, which talks about what motivates people. And if you pay people who do cognitive work, not assembly line work, but do cognitive work more for everything that they do, that they deliver, they do their job worse. Because what you're creating is a scarcity mindset to say, I'm just doing stuff to get money, that you need to pay people fairly. And I think that's your point, Jim. We need to pay people fairly to their worth. And then cognitive workers work for autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And Chris talked about purpose. There's just an article in the Journal of the American Medical Association, the organization that Patrice Harris, who's one of our own, just became the first African-American woman ever to be president of the AMA, which we're so proud of. That is awesome, yes. But they wrote that a strong sense of purpose in adults gives you an odds ratio of almost 3 times as much to living to a long and healthy old age. So sense of purpose is super important. Other questions? Lisa, the microphone is coming at you.
So from the 2016 and 2017 surveys, can you give examples of specific things that you did, and did they make a difference on those questions when you gave the survey the following year?
Yeah, these were the slides I kind of skipped through. But just to highlight on a couple of things, I talked about the market adjustments and critical retention pay programs that we put in place, the performance management process in general, the fact that we've got as close to 100% participation as you can realistically get. On the celebration of Mountaineer Values, the 150th anniversary coin was one of the programs we put in place, the Dependent Education Scholarship. I'm missing a couple of others. There's one there we go. Campus conversations, just doing this, the way that we communicate, the way that we make policy changes. One of the commitments we gave to folks was my team is never going to put a policy in place where we haven't had venues like this and we haven't talked it through and people haven't felt like they've had a voice in the process. And then the values coin has been one that's been a huge win for us, where we took that 150th coin celebration and then carried that forward because it worked so well. We've done now 3 years of this coin. We'll be redesigning this fall. This year will be the 4th year into that. Now, it, again, doesn't make us fabulous at all of these things, but it moves the needle. And if we can get into trying to get to where I can get to the numbers, when you look at those total changes, this one's HSC, but I can go back to the WVU slide too, and you can see the same kind of recognized and rewarded moved up, appreciated and valued moved up, feedback and coaching, decisions made for the greater overall good of the university. So we think these have helped drive those numbers, but mainly what we're trying to do is just create this at the leadership level, the awareness around culture, the impact the decisions those individual leaders make. And so we'll try to drive something centrally, but it's kind of an 80-20, and we'll look at that and say, 20% of what we do can drive results, 80% of what Clay does. So what he does around recognition or what he does around involvement with folks is going to have a bigger impact than anything we're going to do centrally.
Thank you very much for the presentation. One of the things that I can't help but notice about the data that distinguishes it from a lot of other surveys is that the sample is treated, I think, as effectively demographically the same. And one of the things that I wonder about is, would there be differences in some of the questions based on various demographic variables like gender or race or religion? Is that included in the data somewhere? And if not, are there plans to include it in future years?
So this particular tool, no. Our vendor, I'm sure, if we wanted to break that out, we could go back to them. We'd have to provide them with the demographic data because all we gave them were names and who they report to, and they hold that and hold the results. So if we wanted to figure it out, we could go back and say that roster that we sent you, here's the gender, here's the ethnicity, here's the age. We could go back and try to do that if we wanted to. We did not purposefully do that up front. What we were trying to do with this tool was we weren't doing anything prior, right? Remember 3 years ago, we were at the place where we weren't even having performance discussions. And so we weren't ready for a full-on engagement survey. We didn't need a laser. We just needed a mallet. And that's kind of what this was. One thing I didn't mention in here is we're not going to do a survey now every year. What we've learned is we're going to go to an every other year cycle. So when we go through this fall, there won't be a survey. Next fall, that'll be the last time we use this tool. And then at that point, we're feeling like we're 4 cycles through this now as a university. We're ready for a real engagement survey, like a more sophisticated tool. That's where I think we'll get into much more of it. We'll be able to slice and dice it differently. We'll also, what I want to eventually get to is each leader. If you're a people leader and you have more than 5 people, you'll have results on you is ultimately where we want to get to. We just weren't ready for that. We had to kind of step our way into it.
I would also say, though, Chris, if people here think that there's a real compelling reason to look at a subsection demographically, then we certainly have the ability to do that potentially, maybe not from this data, but from other tools, correct?
Well, from other tools, but also with this data. For a price, we can, our vendor will go back and we can do that. We just have to be committed to the price.
So we're happy to accept any contributions from you.
Yeah.
Eric, Joe, question?
Thank you. Maybe a comment and a question. I think one of the things that's evident of the culture here is you look across the room and we have faculty and staff and students and administrators, and we have people in suits, and we have people in white coats, and we have people in blue jeans, right? So the conversation is open. What I wonder about is how much of the change that we're making is so far serendipitous versus intentional, and if there's something we need to be doing to ramp up in terms of intentionality on this. And it's kind of building on Lisa's comments and questions. And so in your mind, what are the things we continue to do, all of us, to lean in on this so that those changes we're trying to achieve happen faster and at a greater pace?
So you want me to start it?
Let me start this one.
Okay. This seems like it's in your wheelhouse.
It is my wheelhouse. So I appreciate that, and I know that you're relatively new here, and I appreciate that your leadership. I would say the following, and I could detail a lot of stuff that we've done that I think suggests that there is a bit of intentionality to what we're building here. But I think that we'll know that we've arrived at the right place where people, all the people in this room, feel safe being themselves. It's interesting. My mom had an injury in Charleston, and she ended up coming up here for rehab. And I haven't been around my mother for a long time, maybe, I don't know, 30 years really, for any length of time. And so I've gotten home from work, and she's in Health South or whatever we call it now. And so I walked over, and I was in shorts, and I had a pullover on, and I was kind of leaning back in a chair, and she was eating her dinner. And she said, I know why you're having fun at this job, because I was at Ohio State for quite a while. And I'm sitting there going like, yeah, you don't really know me that well anymore, really. I mean, she knows me, but not really. And so I'm kind of like, okay, smart lady, tell me why I'm having so much fun, give me your great insight. And what she said almost took me out of my chair to my knees, because like, okay, all right, done. She said, because you get to be yourself. And I think that to me is what I want us to be. I want people to feel like it's good enough just to be yourself. We all play roles, and we're all, in different uniforms, as you said, I wear my white coat when I'm going to something. I need to be in my uniform. But I think that the idea is that no matter what we wear to work, whether we're a tie or not, we're all valuable for who we are. And one of the reasons why I'm very insistent that people call me by my first name is because I want to make sure that we all level set that we're here because we choose to be here working together for a greater good. And as leaders, our goal and role is to help the people who are doing the real work. And once we forget who's doing the real work, we have a problem. But I think here, I hope that people feel comfortable with each other, and I can hear anything that anybody has to say about anything that can make this better if people are sincere with what they say. And I think that if we can be authentic, there can be no greater objective finding to say we will have arrived at the place that we would like to be. And T.S. Eliot, the poet, said, and we'll continue our exploration, and at the end of our exploring, we'll arrive at the beginning and only know it then for the first time. And that's what we're doing. We're coming full circle, and I think the idea is this is your place and our place, not my place. So when Chris said, Clay's doing this or that, the answer is, I'm not doing anything. If we're doing anything good, we're doing this together. And I'm serious about that. That's the only way this works, is if people put real skin in the game, because a lot of times we show up and we do what we need to do, and then we go home and do our real lives. If you choose to do your real life here, then that's powerful.
And the only piece I would add to that is our strengths, student centricity. It's like second nature to us in terms of how we treat a student, how we react to a student situation, how you would talk to a parent. I mean, just second nature. But then I'll watch that same kind of mindset when it switches to a coworker, and we'll just get nasty or passive aggressive, or just things you would do to a coworker that you would never, ever, ever remotely consider doing to a student or the parent of a student. If we can get that same kind of thinking transferred over to collegiality and into that mindset of, treat each other with the same respect that we treat our students, it'd be a great place to work. But a lot of the issues we bump into that we wind up that, kind of detract from the culture, a lot of it's just a genuine lack of collegiality, where we treat each other a lot nastier than we would ever think of treating a student. And if we can impact that, I think we make a huge difference.
Let me tell one story real quick.
We'll get to you.
We got a question over there. So one of our leaders sent me a TED Talk, and the TED Talk was about a woman talking about chickens. And the TED Talk was about this study that was done where the question was, if you took the super producing chickens laying eggs and put them all together, would they do better or worse? And it turns out you put the super chickens together, they actually do worse. If you only have a super chickens, because they sort of fight each other, and if you have the usual colony, everybody thrives. But if you have the super colony, only a few survive, and in fact, only a few of the chickens actually lived because they pecked each other to death. And what they found was, looking at team dynamics, the single best predictor in their study from team dynamics was the idea that people knew each other and liked each other. They have personal relationships. So I think that really goes to what we're saying. So don't peck each other to death, please.
If you take one thing away from today.
Hey, Clay. Hey, Chris. I'm good. So my name is Anthony Danko. I work with the Wellness Center with Dave Harshbarger here, and one of my specific missions is mindfulness. And you guys mentioned, right, like personal and professional growth, and I feel that I've been offered that privilege and opportunity to have that here, because mindfulness, it kind of puts you at the forefront of your thoughts and your feelings, your emotions, all the things that maybe we kind of avoid on a regular basis and just want to operate. So I'm interested in one of the main points with the high levels of feedback and coaching, and specifically I attended this forum called Landmark Forum, which encouraged things like authenticity, where we can operate in power, in freedom, and self-expression. And it really encouraged us to dive deeper, like into the purposes, into the why. And as a younger person here, and you guys mentioned people 20 years down the road feeling like, hey, I could be here for 20 or 30 years and not have any purpose or any real attachment to my work. And I'm just starting here. We're only, maybe 18 months into this mindfulness thing. Where could the opportunities be to help us more connect, right? We all have fear in this room. We all have rejection and anxiety and different things that go on. I mean, you can hear it in my voice. Like, I'm scared to be talking in front of 100 people. Like, But where's the opportunities for us to connect in a more authentic way where we could share stories that, the larger why of the collective, and then also understand individual stories where there could be some overlap. I guess my question is, where have you guys created any kind of coaching programs that people that are not just on high levels can participate in?
Yeah, so I'll talk about what we have in Maria's shop. And were you moving your hand over there?
I was trying to listen.
Oh, okay. Because Maria's in the room, so I didn't know if she was like, hey, I want to answer
Make
this
sure
or not.
she uses the microphone if you're talking
Yeah.
around. Thank you.
But we have tailored our leadership programs around where we think our greatest opportunities are, and those are open enrollment for anybody that's in a supervisory capacity, to kind of teach them what they need to know so they don't have to learn the hard way. The other thing we've done is we've created an upward feedback survey that we did as a pilot this year. We did just sort of where anybody who supervises a staff member that would be in our electronic performance appraisal system, they had the opportunity for their people to give them feedback on leader behaviors. And where we got those leader behaviors was through focus groups. We actually did a number of them here. Where we came out and said, okay, what behaviors are our leaders good at? Which behaviors are our leaders not good at? And this is a learning from Google, that same study that Clay talked about. They realized that there was no feedback loop for anybody that was in a leadership role, right? And so this year, when we go through this, everybody that has 5 or more direct reports will get their individual results. The first year, we didn't want people to be threatened by it or feel that it was a stick, because it's purely just going to be a look in the mirror. And they'll get their results. They'll be able to see, where do I have opportunities? And then we've built our training to mirror up with that if you get opportunities and feedback from your folks and you want to get better at coaching, or you want to get better at delegation, or favoritism is one that we kind of hear a lot, we've got coursework then that aligns with the feedback that will come from that upward feedback survey.
And I would say for anybody in the room who's interested in this, whether you have a number of people reporting to you or not, we're happy to try to help make sure that you get those lessons. And I think your articulation of another pathway that we've opened up, and thanks to Dave and Anthony and other folks that have done this, but we have, and Marcia for her quality of life initiative, we have free classes in mindfulness and yoga and in other techniques that may be beneficial to individuals to try to gain a more centered perspective of their own lives, and not just their work lives, but their entire lives. And we welcome anybody from health sciences, from university, from community to attend and uptake anything that we do. So we have no goal to make this closed at all. We have a goal to try to offer a number of different experiences for people that they may find rewarding, but we don't feel like anybody needs to do anything. This is just more that we want to make that available. But if there's other sort of areas of coaching or instruction or help, Anthony, you or others in the room would like, you should let us know. And if we don't have something actively, then we can try to create something or leverage some of the other things that are going on at the university.
Chris, one of the other things that we find that's unusual on your campus than some of the others, and with your leader, is that there's not only an openness to wanting to hear those stories and what makes this work so meaningful for you and purposeful, but Clay has encouraged and actually asked us to come and conduct focus groups. So this is an area where we are here pretty regularly. And so when he got the results of this survey, he asked us to come back, and we'll be back the week of July 15th, I think, and doing some work with your staff to hear how he can make some of those results more actionable. And in addition to what Chris said, we have responsibility for ensuring alignment in the organization. So the results of this survey, upward feedback, performance management, the feedback that we get in focus groups, and what I'm hearing today gets translated into action. So we're always looking for ways to do better coaching, replicate your best practices in other areas. So it's a very purposeful strategy.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Val, question, then David back there.
So I don't have a question, but I just have a comment. I've worked at the Health Science Center since 1971. I've worked in various roles, and I've seen operations under many different administrations, but the culture here has changed significantly through the years, and especially these last 3+ years. And I've told people that I've been talking to that the change, the culture change here is almost palpable in the hallways there. And maybe I'm in a unique situation. I had a retirement timer on my phone for a number of years, and my retirement date was supposed to be September of 2017. I'm still here. I enjoy coming to work, and I love the Health Science Center. And a lot of it, and it's not always been that way.
Right.
There, obviously I was on a countdown, but it's a good place to work, and there is a move in the direction that I would echo the thought that it is the good time, the best time to be working at the Health Science Center.
Thank you, Val.
Thanks. It's awesome.
I just have a quick question. I do see your courses because I'm in a role that would get your courses, but rarely are they ever in the Health Sciences Center, which would be a whole lot more convenient for me. There have been a few that I've seen I'd like to attend, but it just really isn't convenient. Is that going to change?
Maria, do you want to talk about location, some of the virtual stuff we've been working on as well?
Location on what, I'm sorry?
Doing management training out here at HSC.
Sure, absolutely. When we develop this training, we always try to move it around to make it as convenient for people as we can. One of the things that we know about your campus is that it's very difficult for you to leave the building and leave your campus. So when you see Chris and I, if we're here for a focus group, often you'll see us at 7 o'clock in the morning so you can get to your research and to your labs. And when we deliver training, we try to make it at times that are convenient for you. So,
But the question was, do we see more offerings? Can we move some more offerings out here?
Or can we
HSC?
help co-develop some out here?
we absolutely can. And the other thing that you will see much more of in the next 18 months is the use of distance technology.
This is
so
the
if you
biggie.
can't leave your desk, you'll be able to log in on your computer, or you'll be able to sit in a room like this if we're only able to deliver a course once, for example, and participate using the technology.
Yeah, we did a pilot with Beckley and Kaiser, and we're still working through some of the wrinkles in the distance technology, but it worked. And so now once we get the wrinkles ironed out, we're going to try to scale that. And, so if you're in Charleston or Panhandle as well, hopefully we'll have broadcast training coming up in the near future.
Great.
Yeah.
David?
So Clay, I have a question. As some of this is larger scope stuff, is there a mechanism where if any faculty, staff, or student sees an opportunity where we can improve something or have suggestions for something that we can let that be known? Because one thing that we've noticed, especially from a photography side, is there are so many more places for people to sit and relax outside and enjoy the green space that we have. But like Era has a huge green thumb, so she's talking about like maybe we could do some native species prairies and stuff like that around here on some of the empty green space that we have. And the veggie garden's been fantastic. Is there any way that we can have input on that kind of stuff that's just, it's not life-changing stuff, but it's stuff that we can feel good about contributing to our own campus here?
Yeah, I think that, so let me just repeat. So that the idea is, how do we start to get more input from people who have interesting ideas, and how do we start to include people in discussions? Is that fundamentally so I think that's probably the most important opportunity that we have in front of us. And as we all know, things move pretty quickly, but they don't have to move without making sure that we're all connected to the same frame. And so one thing that we've talked about, and I don't know if we've settled on this or not, but is maybe a virtual suggestion box, or maybe even a virtual and a physical suggestion box that people could drop their ideas in. I think that as we go forward, there may be areas that you're interested in becoming involved in. And so Marcia DeMarco has helped put together a group around the Quality of Life Initiative, which include a lot of the green space and the farmers market and trying to have more outside seating, and also with Dave Harshbarger and Anthony around some of the offerings around yoga and physical fitness and exercise and mindfulness. And so I think that if you want to be involved, we would be delighted to involve you. And you can contact me and my email, or Marcia DeMarco. And so if you want to volunteer, we're happy to have as many people volunteer for things as possible. If you have good ideas and they're not wildly expensive, we're happy to try to make them real. We're happy to try to create whatever vision you have, because at some point, this is all of our place and we want to make it as good as we possibly can. So I think that the key for us, and David, I might ask you to help with this too, because David is really our social media person in our Office of Communications, is that we need to create an inroad that allows people in the room and beyond, if you have an idea or if you want to be involved with something, let us know and we will be happy to get you involved, and Tara can help with that as well. Happy to get you involved in any way that you want to contribute. And if you want to contribute not your money, we'll contribute the money. But if you want to contribute your time and your energy and your passion and your vision, that's the way we make this place great together.
And the only thing I'll add to that too, the Bureaucracy Busters website, all the slides from today will be on that website, but there's also an opportunity there. When Clay talked about a virtual suggestion box, you have the opportunity there as well to submit suggestions, ideas, and we do have somebody that monitors that and kind of pushes that back out to the right leader or right part of the organization. So that's also another vehicle there.
And Paula has told me whatever it costs is no problem.
Wow.
I'm kidding. So I think that's time's up. It's 1 o'clock. I'm happy to hang out, and so is Chris, for a few minutes if anybody has individual suggestions or questions. Thank you guys so much for coming. If there's ice cream outside that's not melted, enjoy it. If there's no ice cream outside, thank you for coming.
Thanks, everybody. Figure out how to turn off my hot mic here.
Not